Good to have you with us today. Thanks for joining in on the channel. I have a very special guest with me, a friend I've known for a good many years. At one time, actually worked for me in my congressional office. And he's very interested in the freedom movement, has been involved for many years, and has a great understanding of just where we've been and where we're going. It's Lew Rockwell. Lew, thanks for being here with us today.
Ron, an honor to be on your channel.
Oh, well, that's great. And Lew, I remember very distinctly that you started the Mises Institute many years ago. How many years now?
Well, almost 32 years ago, and
32
you've been a big help since the very beginning.
Right.
A good supporter.
And the one thing that we always had an agreement on, and we still talk a lot about it in the channel, is we're very much involved in politics and political ideas and all, but we also emphasize education. And that's more or less what you've been involved in. I mean, when you say that's almost your whole dedication is
Sure,
education?
I think it's 100%. And as you always point out, our hope is in changing the hearts and the minds of the people. If the climate of opinion changes, then there's nothing even a tyrannical government can do to stand against it.
Right. And I believe we met because we had a common acquaintance, and that was our friend Leonard Reed. And he did a great job when things were pretty quiescent, after World War II. And Mises, of course, had to suffer through that period of time and be abused, academically speaking. But he sort of held it together. But now there are a lot more groups, and organizations, and certainly yours. Do you concentrate on educating high school kids? Are you concentrating on college kids? Are you trying to get people to become professors and teach? Or is there one goal, or is it all of those?
Well, Mises always said that economics was too important to be left to the economists. It was important that we all understand something about economics so we can understand what the government and the special interests and pressure groups, as he called them, were trying to do to us. So we want to try to reach everybody. Just as in his seminars, he didn't just have academics, he had business leaders and financial leaders. He also, of course, was concerned about students. So we deal with high school students, especially homeschool students, mostly college students, also graduate students, professors, journalists, business leaders, anybody who's interested in learning something about how economics really works, how the world actually functions, as versus what, say, Paul Krugman would try to tell us it's about.
Now, you have your web page, and you have a lot of academic articles available. Why don't you tell the listeners how your web page works and the organization? Do people join? Do they become members? Or they just look at your website? Or how does that work?
Well, it's a tax-deductible 501c3 organization, and people who want to become members for just $50 can help us out. They can go to Mises.org, MISES.org, and we have a huge website, thousands of books, thousands of articles, all for free, videos, lectures. There's a huge education to be had just on this website. That we have special programs in the summer for Mises University for kids who come from all over the world. This is a worldwide movement. Just like Marxism was a worldwide movement, this is sort of we're the anti-Marxist movement, the anti-Keynesian movement. This is also worldwide. And of course, you built that up with these last two presidential campaigns. We find wherever we go and anywhere in the world, there are Ron Paulians. And they're interested in what you have talked about against the Federal Reserve, against central banking, against central planning, against all the horrific things that the government regulations and interventions do to make us poorer, and also, of course, to promote warfare and horrible warfare within the country in terms of groups fighting each other, and of course warfare with other countries too.
Now, Mises has an interesting personal history. Being Jewish, he had to barely escape Europe, and it's fascinating to me about where his books ended up and how they weren't destroyed. And those are interesting stories. Is there one book that is your favorite to talk about Mises as a person, on where he came from, what he did? I always was fascinated with the fact that he wrote Human Action. He came here when he was approximately 60, is that right? Yeah. 60 years old. Can you imagine? I can't imagine me going to Germany when I'm 60 and learning German and learn to write in German. That's essentially what he did.
Well, he was an astounding intellect. I mean, he was the most significant economist of the 20th century. And he came here, it's like a movie. He and his wife, Margaret von Mises, escaped across Europe just ahead of the German armies, through France and into Portugal, just barely got out and got over to the United States. And Leonard Reed supported him, helped him out.
Henry Hazlitt.
Henry Hazlitt. And Hazlitt said when he got a call at the New York Times from Mises, he said, I felt as if I'd gotten a call from John Stuart Mill or Adam Smith. He hadn't realized that Mises was even still alive. But he still had many great years ahead of him. He wrote his most important books in English in the United States. And he started this movement for laissez-faire economics and understanding why the Keynesians and the Marxists and all these kinds of things have got everything exactly wrong, and why it just brings trouble.
He had to be a man of great patience. When you think about, he anticipated barely in time
Yes.
for the discrimination that was coming and that he was witnessing and knew his life was threatened. Right. So he had to escape the discrimination against Jews in Europe. But then he comes over here to freedom and prosperity, and in a way he was discriminated against because of his views on liberty.
Well, he taught at New York University for many years, but he was always a visiting professor and an unpaid visiting professor. And they would put his classes in the basement at the worst times, and they were always very nasty to him. But he never let it stop him. Murray Rothbard, his greatest student, talked about how he never complained. He never had any bitter comments or unhappy comments about himself. He just went ahead every day, teaching the right ideas, reaching students, reaching other people, and building a foundation for a vast edifice of liberty.
And we know many of those economists who wanted to get ahead in the establishment, they would just shift their views. They became Keynesian,
That's right.
And then they got into university, so they sold out. You bring up Murray's name, and you worked for a while in the first time I was in Congress, and I recall us talking about Murray, and you said, "Do you want me to call him?" I said, "Yeah, call him." I said, "I've never met him." So lo and behold, Murray came and started a friendship, not only between Murray and myself, but Murray and you. Matter of fact, you got to know him even better. And he worked in the Mises Institute for a long time, didn't he?
Sure, he was head of our academic affairs until his death, and a huge influence still. And I sometimes think he's the best-read economist in the world. Now, there maybe Krugman is up there too, but all over the world, young people read Rothbard, people of all sorts, and he's such a compelling writer. Yeah. You just put that name into Google, and you find a vast amount of stuff. We have all his works for free.
Now, see, Murray, being Jewish, he wasn't discriminated like Mises was, in Europe. But he received some of this intellectual discrimination, even though even not quite as bad, because he eventually got into university. Is that correct?
Well, he had a PhD from Columbia. He had, of course, top marks all through. Yeah. Arthur Burns, the Nixon's head of the central bank, blocked his getting a PhD. And it was only when Burns went to work for Eisenhower, Murray was able to get his PhD at Columbia. Oh, wow. So Burns knew what Rothbard was all about and what he might accomplish.
Well, we remember and dealt with Murray, and I actually heard probably one of the very last lectures from Mises, in Houston. Knew Murray very well and knew Hayek. But give me an idea on how you think we're doing. I imagine, when Mises was here and when Leonard started the Fee Foundation, they had to have conviction to keep this going. Mm-hmm. But the freedom movement was rather mellow. It wasn't very strong. But how do you see things happening, especially since the early 1980s, what's that, 30-some years that you've had your institute? There's been so many involved, but have you become more optimistic about things?
No, it's just unbelievable. I can remember back in the 80s, if somebody wrote us or phoned us they were interested in Mises, we practically had a party. I mean, it's just a great thing that, because of the internet today, people put Mises or Rothbard into Google anywhere in the world, and they come to us. And we have such an amount of free material available for them. And of course, especially your two last presidential campaigns have brought so many millions of young people to an interest in Austrian economics and Austrian business cycle theory and all the things that have happened, that are going to happen, and what we can do about it. So it's a world movement. In every country we're involved with, kids are interested, and here in America too, of course.
There had to have been some groundwork laid from organizations like yours and others, because when I went to campuses, and liberal campuses too, if I brought up the word, spontaneously, it was the news commentators, what's this Australian economic, Austria. Yeah. But students would respond in the audience. I mentioned, Mises or Austrian, they would get applause.
They'd applaud, heavily applaud, yeah.
And I thought, where is this coming from? And then it built as the time went on. But, I am, obviously convinced that you can't change anything unless you change almost like a generation. And this is why I get really excited about our young people. And you have a lot of young people come to your summer seminars, don't you?
And we have a huge number of very smart kids who know that at their regular colleges and universities, most of the courses they're getting, it's a lie. They're not being taught the truth, but they want the truth. They're hungry for the truth. So it's just, of course, a thrilling thing to be involved with them. And it's all based on, there's so many great leaders of freedom over the centuries. But really, I think this is our time. And it's a good thing it's our time because, of course, the bad guys are doing a lot of awful stuff, too.
Two other things I mentioned is, first, the obvious failure of the economics we've been following for 70 or 80 years. Keynesianism is over and done with. But also, you mentioned your website and what's available for free. When I was looking for books in the 50s and the 60s, I found, Fee, and I could order books, and I can go to bookstores. But now you can one click, and the next day it's in your house.
That's right.
And the one thing where some of the libertarians were wrong. Did you hear the predictions when the internet came out? Oh, nobody will buy books anymore, because everybody will read them off the internet. But what happened is we ended up buying more books.
Well, they're different goods, so it's useful to have something on your screen. But not all of us like to read a book on the screen. We prefer the old-fashioned book. Yeah. So there's still, of course, and you're exactly right, an increased market for books, as well as Kindle and
See, that's why it
so
can't
forth.
be stopped. And it's crossing borders, it's worldwide,
That's right.
and an idea whose time has come. And it's really pretty exciting. And that's also the reason why I like to I get energy for the young people, but I have to try to get them energized too. They live in exciting times. It's not all dire.
No, absolutely
But if you look at on the surface, you say, oh yeah, the whole world's coming to an end because of Obamacare. No, that's just the private practice of medicine as we've known it. But there's people, this one doctor that you knew that was in Oklahoma, he was a Misesian.
Yeah.
And he set up a private practice without government right now in the midst of this chaos. So as long as we have the right, to legally opt out, that's what's, so bad about Obamacare. It looks like they don't want us to opt out. And what do they want to do? Punish the young kids. That's one thing. The young people are realizing they're getting punished and penalized, to try to hold the system together that is falling apart. So that's what really gets me excited, and I think we have a great future.
Well, we can't ever forget that the things they're teaching are based on lies. What we're teaching is based on the truth. So the lies can't win in the long run. I think there are religious reasons and other reasons why that's true. Truth will win out. So as long as we stick to teaching the truth, and we're in the catbird seat. They may seem to be running everything now, but that's all underneath. It's all weakness and corruption and decay. They're not going to last.
I think it's a little harder pointing out the truths. You point out the failures, but in foreign policy, you can point out the lies a little bit easier because they lie and they say, well, we have to invade Iraq because the Al-Qaeda is there and they have nuclear weapons, and then they get caught in their lie. It's a little bit harder to catch them in their lie, even though in statistics we're catching them in their lies too. They deceive us. Most people don't believe that we have only 2% price inflation.
No.
People laugh at that.
Yeah. Or that the unemployment rate is 7%. We know it's much higher than that.
It's probably like a depression going on.
Every word out of their mouth is a lie. I mean, if they ever tell the truth, it's by mistake. So that's very powerful for us.
And of course, if we point it out, the old saying about truth is treason, because they want to maintain their empire. So it's all built on lies, but eventually truth does win out, and that to me is what this is all about.
Right.
So I think it's great. What do you have in store? Anything new at the Mises Institute? You have your periodic. You do some visiting around country, or is that around the country?
We have conferences around the country and conferences in Auburn, Alabama, where the institute is located. but we have all kinds of programs. But what we're developing right now, because we think the whole of sort of typical mainstream bricks and mortar higher education, with the fantastic debts they impose on students and all the other things that's wrong with them, is actually seen their height and they're headed downwards. So with our Mises Academy, our online courses, we hope to eventually can't give degrees because they don't let you do that, it's a state monopoly, but you can give certificates, you can give diplomas. So somebody would be able to study and get a certificate in Austrian economics. And we find that, and this is true in other areas of academia too, businesses take these certificates, if they're from the right kind of institution, just as serious as they take it from a government university or other kind of university.
Of course, along this line is one of the reasons why I got interested in homeschooling.
That's right.
Start them out early. Yeah.
Homeschooling is the beginning, and we find that it's so extraordinary when we see these homeschooling kids. They look you right in the eye, they're smart, they're serious, they want to learn.
Amazing.
What a great bunch of kids.
Yeah, and in the midst of this chaos that we have, war and poverty and unemployment, and yet there's all these good signs there. It reminds me a little bit about the history of the 30s, because, Roosevelt, first time around, ran on a good program.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he was the gold standard guy, and they were the Republicans spending too much money, but the universities were filled with the bad guys. And they immediately got in the administration, and everybody was converted just like overnight. Right. So I think we have infiltrated in the various ways differently now, because it's through a group like the Mises Institute and through the internet. But we have them in the universities too, don't you? Have even the average university generally will have a
It's a huge difference from 30 years ago. Yeah. In terms of number of Austrian professors. It's now, you don't have to hide it. I mean, it's actually a benefit at a lot of colleges and universities if you're interested in Austrian economics, because they know the kids are interested, the parents are interested, the alumni are interested. So, so yes, it's possible. We have great teachers all over this country, all over the world. I mean, this is not just an American movement.
Well, my goal is, when we want to talk about Austrian economics, that they no longer say, Ron, why do you believe in Australian?
That's right.
Economic. But a lot of times I mix it up. Austrian does, it's a shame. I wish the Austrians were a little bit better on Austrian economics. But a lot of times I'll just call it free market economics or Austrian free market economics. But most people are identifying the term Austrian, with a good school of economics.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that name was foisted on our guys by the German Historical School.
What, Austrian?
Yes, because they were big central planners, and they also looked down on anything Austrian. Anything Austrian was inferior to anything German. So by naming it the Austrian school, they thought they'd put the kibosh on it. Yeah. Well, it didn't work.
We revived that term, didn't we?
Yes.
So this is great. Have a comment or two about the Institute. We got to close out here in a second, and encourage people to get contact with you.
Well, yeah, people can write me. They can just write me to Rockwell@Mises.org, or they can go to Mises.org, the site, and we're delighted to give them information. We love having more members. We want students. In fact, our goal is to have everybody anywhere in the world interested in real economics in touch with us. We want to be in touch with everybody. So we love donations, but you don't have to give us a donation. If you're interested in these kinds of ideas, we want to hear from you. We want you on our mailing list. We want you to read our books. Everything for free.
Very great. Great, Lou. Thanks for being with us today.
Ron, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Of course, this is a subject that's dear to my heart, and that is education. I believe that's the most important thing that we do. People's minds and attitudes and their concept of government does play a role. It's the most important thing on what type of government we have, people's attitudes. And that is what is changing, and that's where we see the excitement, and that's where we're having a lot of fun, because we know we're on the right side of this issue, and our numbers are growing, and we're witnessing now the failure of Keynesianism. We're witnessing the failure of this foreign policy of interventionism. We're going into bankruptcy, and yet we're optimistic that we have something to replace it with. I've often said that, I've never been the greatest speaker in the world, and I get my criticism, but I tell you where I have my confidence. I have my confidence in free market economics, individual liberty, a non-interventionist foreign policy, because I believe it's morally correct. I believe that was the goal of our early founders of this country, and they had had a good plan, but we have gone astray. In the last 100 years, we've gone in the wrong direction, but I see a reversal, and I want to thank all of you for joining in and supporting the channel and spread the message, because this is the way that we will change our country for the better. Thank you very much for tuning in, and stay tuned to the channel. Thank you very much.